Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. I am, of course, Andy Robarczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller, Rochester, New York. Good to be back with all of you this week.
So, for our new listeners, or for even our returning listeners who don't remember what we do on this show, every week we will take you on a coaster journey throughout the entire industry, giving you our uncut opinion on the parks and rides that we all love. So tonight, a little bit of a continuation from last week, where last week we were talking about the Golden Ticket Awards. Oh, it's already started, I see. Yes, indeed, tonight we'll be talking about the 2014 Best New Ride. 2014 Best New Ride in that great ride that took only 7 years to build. Only 7! Like, that's a miracle.
And didn't even open in 2014.
Didn't even open in 2014. And, of course, we're talking about the man, or I should say the ride, the myth, the legend. We're talking about Flying Turns. So, Danny, I've stood there and watched it cycle a number of times in one evening. You've actually been on the ride, so why don't you tell us a little bit about this legendary coaster already?
Right, yeah, it's legendary for far longer than it's been operational. Not necessarily for the right reasons. It's almost become kind of a punchline, really. Everyone said, when hell freezes over, Flying Turns will open. Well, pigs fly, hell freezes over, Flying Turns opens at Knoebels. So let's talk about the ride itself, the ride experience, before we get into our little debate. So what I would compare it to, for you East Coast people, if you've been to King's Dominion and you've ridden Avalanche, their Mack bobsled ride that oddly enough sits right next to Volcano. The Avalanche sits next to the Volcano there at King's Dominion. But it's very similar to that. It's a wooden version of that. Comparable speeds. You get about the same sort of...
A little bit slower than Avalanche if you look at the ride stats.
You're right. A little bit slower than Avalanche. Not quite as long of a ride. But a similar feel to it, I would say. Thinking for you, maybe not West Coast people, but Texas people in particular, La Vibora down there at Six Flags Over Texas. Very comparable to the feel of that ride. So it's a wooden bobsled is what it is. And if you don't know that, if you're watching this show, you probably know what Flying Turns is. So I don't know how many people on COASTER-net and how many people watching the show have actually ridden Flying Turns. You've been to the park and didn't get to ride it due to what we'll call weather.
Weather.
So, and we'll talk about that because I had an issue similar to that when I went there back in the spring. The ride itself actually has 3 lift hills. There is one at the very beginning that it gets you up a little bit. It's not very high, maybe 25 feet or so, and then you just do a helix and then you hit the main lift hill. That gets you to a height, I want to say it's around 60 feet or so, 50, 60 feet or so. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. And then you go through essentially a little serpentine run, and then it kind of figure eights back underneath itself, and then do a serpentine run towards the end. Then you hit the brakes, and then you do one lift hill to kind of get you back up to station level. It's not that high, maybe 10 feet off the ground or so. It's just to kind of get you back up to station height. So similar to Ninja out at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the suspended coaster. It starts and ends with a lift hill. Thunderation at Silver Dollar City does the same thing. So as far as the ride goes, it's 24 miles per hour, not very fast at all. Nothing to get excited about in terms of that. And it's not even what I would call a thrilling ride. If you read my blog 2 weeks ago about this whole Best New Ride and Flying Turns thing, and I've done a lot of articles about Flying Turns, not because so much that I like Knoebels. I really like Knoebels. You know that. A lot of people know that. I love the Phoenix. I really like Flying Turns. I really like Twister. I like Knoebels as a whole. That being said, I'm not an absolute hardcore Knoebels fanboy like there are out there.
Hold on. I do believe you own a Phoenix denim jacket. To me, that screams hardcore Knoebels fanboy. I think you're undercutting yourself by.
No, okay, so if you consider that, it's a Phoenix jacket. It's not a Knoebels jacket.
Yeah, it's a Phoenix jacket.
If you're talking Phoenix, then yeah, I will defend the Phoenix till life's end.
And I love Phoenix too. Like, Phoenix was about one of the only things I loved there, to be honest with you.
Oh boy, here we go. I absolutely love Phoenix. I have the painting of the Phoenix right here over my shoulder here. I mean, Phoenix is just, to get sidetracked for a minute, Phoenix, not having individual seatbelts and having the buzz bar there, the airtime is just like nothing else. I joke around with certain people and say that Phoenix is the world's only stand-up wooden roller coaster, and only people who have ridden it know what that means. And the first time one of my buddies, I told him that, and he was like, "What do you mean? It's a stand-up wooden roller coaster? What are you talking about?" I was like, "Wait till you ride it." He was like, "I totally get what you meant now," because you don't even need seats on that ride. You don't use them. So it's just one of those. It's one of those rides that's just different, and it's a little thing like not having seatbelts that make it like that, really, because if it had seatbelts, I don't think it would be as good. So Phoenix fanboy, and again, I love Knoebels. I absolutely love going there. I go there as much as I can every season. And now that they have Flying Turns here, it gives them a really diverse wooden roller coaster lineup when you think about it. You have Phoenix, which is an airtime machine. You have Twister, which has a little bit of airtime, but it's mostly lateral forces. It really throws you around. And then you have Flying Turns, which is this really weird thing that's like nothing else that's out there. It's not fast. It's not tall. It's not really that forceful. It's not intense. It's nothing that you think of.
It's nothing.
It's nothing that you think of when you talk about a really fun roller coaster. But it still ends up being a really fun ride to ride. And that's my personal view on it. It's not fast. It's not tall. It's not intense. I don't even know that I would call it thrilling in the traditional sense. For me, I don't know that I can say it's nostalgic for me because I've never ridden one before. You just kind of hear stories and you have to go. When I was there the day after it opened, the Sunday that it opened, the first day it was open to the public, there were people there, and I talked to a fellow Acer in line who had ridden the Riverview Park Bobs in Chicago, which is, or the Riverview Park Flying Turns, not the Riverview Park Bobs. The Riverview Park Flying Turns, which is the most similar to the Knoebels Flying Turns. After the second lift hill, the main part of the ride is essentially a mirror image of the Riverview Park Flying Turns. It's very similar. That's the one it was patterned after. And he said it was a couple, and they said this ranks right up there with those kinds of rides. I mean, it gives you that sort of feeling. So for them to have ridden one of the original Flying Turns type rides, and then to now do it again 50 years later and kind of go back, it's a neat experience for them. And I think it's neat for people who are my age that never got to ride rides like that to kind of do a little bit of a flashback to a period you were never in. So, and again, that doesn't change what the ride is, but if you go in with the right attitude and you just expect a fun, unique experience, you're gonna enjoy the ride. If you go in expecting a Phoenix or a Twister, you're not gonna enjoy it because that's not what it is. And in terms of ranking rides and saying which is the best ride, I think Phoenix and Twister are both better rides. That doesn't mean that I don't like Flying Turns, because I do. And I like it for what it is. It's kind of like, I talked about this on our first episode, Wonder Mountain's Guardian. If you're expecting a roller coaster, a thrill ride, you're not going to be all that happy with it. But when you go in knowing that it's a dark ride, a shooting ride, and something that has a really cool storyline, when you go in knowing what it's going to be and you know what to expect and you keep those expectations down, you're not going to be disappointed. And I think that's how you have to approach Flying Turns. That's how I approached it. And I was lucky because my sister and aunt got to actually ride it the day before me, because I had a hockey game the Saturday, and they said it's really cool. It's really cool. It's not fast. It's not really that intense, but it's a lot of fun. And that's what it is. And that's when you build something like this, that's all you can really ask.
So I think the question at hand here, though, is like, the ride is the ride. Like, there's no doubting what the ride is. I think everyone understands that it's that piece of nostalgia, like you said. It's trying to recreate something in the modern time that, and obviously Knoebels ran into a lot of problems with that, with trying to take an old school ride and set it in the modern day with the modern day safety regulations and all this and all that. So that was the challenge there. But I think the question at hand is really, why should this be the best new ride of 2014? Like, let's even discount the idea that it opened up early, because, like in baseball, when you have the Rookie of the Year award, that you have to play a certain number of games before you can actually be qualified for Rookie of the Year. Here, maybe this is that. Maybe this is that Rookie of the Year, because it only opened up for a few weeks, maybe at the end of the season.
It opened to enthusiasts on the day of Phoenix Fall Fun Fest, which was Saturday, the first Saturday in October. It did not open to the public. That's a common misconception. I don't believe it opened to the public. It opened at 6 o'clock when ERT started for people who had registered for Fun Fest. Mm-hmm. So it ran from 6 to 10. And then Sunday it opened to the public. That's the day I rode it, because I had a hockey game up here in Rochester, so I didn't get to go down to Fun Fest. That's where my aunt and sister rode it. So it was open then for the next few weekends, so 3-4 weeks. So maximum, it was open for like 10 days for people to ride. And to be honest, many people actually rode it?
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think that's enough time for a ride to be open. So I'm okay with qualifying it for the 2014 awards, given that it really did open in 2014. Officially, probably what most
like
people.
A sneak preview, if nothing else. It was really like a sneak preview, like in baseball. If a guy comes up in the last month of the season, the next year he can still qualify for Rookie of the Year because he didn't qualify, like you were saying. So, okay, so I think we're at least on the same page there. And I think most people, if they don't agree with that, they at least understand that thought process, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So then the question becomes, is how does this ride, that you can't say that this year was a year of slouches either, that you had You had two pretty big rides open up in Goliath and Banshee. And you've also had a few smaller rides, too, that opened up. Things like Rorosaurus that probably didn't get a lot of riders in its first year because of its location. But in general, pretty good reviews coming out from that ride. What else came? Is there anything else I'm missing that came out? Well, Wonder Mountain.
You had Wonder Mountain's Guardian, and I absolutely think that should have at least been in the discussion in terms of a best new ride. Maybe not roller coaster, but as far as attraction goes.
And this category is best new ride. It's not best new coaster. Right. So you can include anything in there if you wanted to.
Right, and the other big one that I guess we kind of forgot about it when we were talking about the Six Flags rides, but Medusa. Absolutely. New Texas Giant won Best New Ride in 2011, and Iron Rattler was second only to Outlaw Run, if I remember correctly, last year. So, the fact that it's in Mexico probably didn't get as many riders as it otherwise would have in the States. But that's one that it wasn't on that list, I don't believe, that I think should have at least been in the discussion. There were a lot of good rides that opened this year, even though they might have been in some more obscure places like Canada, Mexico, New Hampshire, to a park that a lot of people have never been to. Great America, Kings Island, and Knoebels are parks that almost everyone's been to that's a coaster enthusiast, or they at least know about.
So the question then becomes, how does Flying Turns beat out these other rides in this category that are pretty heavy hitters for the most part? So why don't you give us your opinion on that?
All right. I see you getting ready with your ammunition already. Get your boxing gloves. I got my hockey skates. So I wrote a blog about it a couple of weeks ago, shortly after the golden tickets came out, and I said it was probably going to be my most controversial blog that I've written in 2.5 years here with COASTER.net. And what it comes down to for me is, I think this year it became even more than – we're not just talking about the ride. When you're talking about the ride – and I think I even talked about this last week, where we did talk about this, where Flying Turns on the wooden coaster rankings for the golden tickets was actually lower than Goliath. Mm-hmm. So the people who are voting – are acknowledging that Goliath is the better ride because their rankings reflect that. And Banshee, I think, came in at 16 on the Steel list. So I don't something like that. So I don't think there's anyone who's ridden both Banshee and Flying Turns that would tell you that Banshee isn't the better ride, because Banshee is the better ride. And I will say that up front here. I'm okay with Flying Turns winning this award, and I'm going to explain why. That being said, if I was voting, I would have voted for Banshee over Flying Turns. And because I think it's the better ride. I think it's the better roller coaster. But the reason that Flying Turns is okay in my book, and why I'm not outraged with it, and why I'm happy that Knoebels and Flying Turns won this award, even though it wouldn't have been my pick, because it's become more than just about the ride. It's become about all the effort that Knoebels put into this. They put over 7, almost 8 years of work into this. They've gone through how many floods where during construction they had to stop construction and take the construction team off of Flying Turns to help flood recovery efforts. And then how many times did they have trains there and they ran them and it didn't work? They went through at least 2 completely different configurations of trains before they got to what they have now. And just so much testing. At some point in 2013, the entire brake run and storage section was completely torn down and rebuilt. So this ride has had different parts of it rebuilt before it was even open, which, again, that goes back to it being a punchline. Like, they have to retrack it before it even opens, you know? So, okay, I get that. Yeah, that's funny, and it's true, because that's what they had to do. But at the end of the day, Knoebels very easily could have said, screw it, we're going to tear it down, it's not going to work. Any other park that would have been spending 7 years to try and open a ride would have done it. They would have done that. I mean, there's several examples of rides that have closed after a year or two because it just didn't work. Let's think about the Bat at Kings Island, the original suspended coaster that sat where Vortex was. Maintenance said, you know what, guys, this just isn't working. It's costing too much money. It's just not the right time. We got to tear it out. And it was gone in 2 years. Knoebels easily could have said after 2 or 3, after the first set of trains said, you know what, it's just not going to work. Let's cut our losses. No. They were determined to get it right, and they were determined to get it open. And that's the way Knoebels has always been. They don't have the typical attitude of a park where we have to get it open. Whenever anyone said, when's Flying Turn's gonna open, they said, we'll open it when it's ready. We don't care. They did the same thing with Black Diamond a couple of years ago. Black Diamond opened for Phoenix Fall Fun Fest 2 years ago. I was there maybe 2 or 3 weeks before that, and it wasn't open. And they said, when it's all done and we do all our testing and everything's in place, we'll let you guys on it. Sure, why not? We don't care if there's 3 weeks left in the year. And some people were like, well, why don't they just wait 3 weeks or 4 weeks and just hype it up all winter and have a big grand opening in April for Flying Turns? That's not what Knoebels does. That's not what they're about. They don't care. And I'll tell you what, if they have problems with Impulse, they're building Impulse right now. If they built Impulse and it was ready in 3 weeks to open for the last day of the season and they would open it for one day, they'd be like, yeah, sure, what the hell, let them on it. That's just the way they are. And the fact that they spent so much time and effort to make sure that they got it open, and they said, we're going to open it. It's going to be ready. We're going to open it. We're going to get this right. We're going to make it happen. And they did. And I think the people who voted kind of said, you know what, it may not be the best ride of this group that we're looking at, but we're going to reward Knoebels for all the time and effort they put into it. And I think that's why it won, and that's why, even though I wouldn't have voted for it and I would have voted for Banshee as my best new ride, that's why I'm okay with Knoebels, and I think that they still do deserve the award.
I'm going to take a different perspective. I'm going to say that I'm not one for pity awards, and I almost feel that this is what this is. Like, I understand the stuff that went into it, but when you're talking about categories, and you can we've already discussed, and you can discuss the merits of the golden tickets, but I almost feel that this is like the perfect award that was handed out to Flying Turns, because it just demonstrates like what the golden tickets are about. And I'm always looking for, I want that Oscars of amusement parks, and to say that you can't have it is ridiculous, because we have it in everything else. That there's no difference between liking roller coasters and liking movies. That there's no great formula for what makes a great movie. There's no piece of paper that says it needs these elements. That
right.
All it is, it's a collection of opinions, and you collect these opinions together, and you can debate the qualities of these opinions. But for the most part, at the end of the year, most of the general public would probably disagree with some of the best movies, but you have a lot of critics agreeing on these things. And I just don't think we have that here with the golden tickets. That we've gotten to the point now, and we saw it last week with Europa, in my opinion, and we're seeing it again here, that once again you have a select group of people handing out awards based on popularity and who they like, versus trying to come up with some sort of, and I know I just said that there's no format for movies, but you do have some agreed upon things that you should vote on. And I just feel that we're moving towards a point now where Knoebels is almost getting a lot of these awards, pity awards, that Dollywood beat them in the food. So they've been slipping on the best park ranking each month. So what are we going to give Knoebels this year? And I don't get that aspect of, we want to keep them in the running here because we want to promote this park. I did not have a good experience there at all. And I let my experience known based on their little online system that they have at the park, and I've still yet to hear a response from it. My experience was not overall good. I was not thrilled with the atmosphere. I was not thrilled with the quality of facilities there. And all the things that I've heard about throughout the years is about how great this park is, how great this is, how great the food is. And you talk about disappointment all the time. And I was going in expecting something. And I knew it wasn't going to be a corporate park. I knew that walking in. I'm not a complete fool. I've seen pictures. I've seen enough. I had a vision in my mind, and basically what that vision was. The only thing different between my vision and what I experienced was there was a lot more trees. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting more open air. But outside of Phoenix, I thought there wasn't much to go there for me personally. And so I sit here befuddled and thinking to myself, well, why is there such love for this park, one? Why is there such love for this ride? And many people have stated that if any other park would have done this, if any other park would have undertaken flying turns, put any Six Flags in front of it, and the enthusiast reaction and attitude towards it would be completely different. Completely different. There would be no way that if Flying Turns was at Six Flags Great Adventure that it would be winning Best New Ride this year. It wouldn't happen. So if that's the case, then you are putting Knoebels on a different playing field. You're not putting them on a level playing field. You're putting them on a completely different playing field and holding them to a different standard than you are every other park that you go to each year, out of some idea in your mind that this park is special for undefined reasons. And when you ask people, and I've asked people, why is this park special? People can't put their finger on it for some reason. It's an undefined specialness for some reason. And I've been told, well, you either get it or you don't get it. And put me in the camp of I don't get it. And the people I was traveling with, they don't get it either. And I just think that it's a shame that you have such quality rides out there. And like I said, at the end of the day, the golden tickets doesn't matter. I think we've established that pretty well. But it's just this idea of it bothers me that we have this award system and that some parks are treated differently than other parks simply based on what their name is and who they are and how many enthusiasts like those parks. And they'll vote one way for a park and have the same exact situation happen at another park and vote them down because of that happening. That if Six Flags took 7 years to build a ride, I guarantee you it would not be opening to the Best New Ride award in that following year. That's just my take on it.
Well, and I guess my response to that would be, if any other park, if a Six Flags park would have undertaken Flying Turns, I don't think it would have ever opened. I don't think they would have spent the time and money to keep redesigning and rebuilding it. I think they just would have said screw it and closed it.
Or it might have opened right in the first place. Like, let's be honest, that the research and the testing and the computer generated stuff, that stuff would have been done before you started putting hammer to nail. And I'm not saying that they would have opened it to begin with. Maybe they would have determined at that point on the computer, this isn't worth trying to undertake. But if they did try to undertake it, I probably venture to guess that it would have been done quicker just because they would have had modern technology behind it trying to put it together.
They have better resources. Absolutely. They have more money to sink into research and development. They have bigger resources. Absolutely. I'm picking up what you're putting down right there. I think when people say you either get it or you don't, I understand. Pardon the pun here, but I get what they mean by that. That being said, that's not my argument for whether or not you enjoy Knoebels. It's not a Sky Rush is a love it or hate it ride. You know what I mean? Sky Rush is a love it or hate it ride. I think Voyage is a love it or hate it ride, really. You either think it's probably one of the best roller coasters you've ever ridden, or you just think it's absolutely too rough and you can't do it.
Well, and that's another example. That's another example of a park that I've always heard great things about, like Holiday World. People are like, you have to go to Holiday World. It's a great park, great atmosphere. Voyage is out of this world. And I go there after hearing all of this. I've heard things ranging from that Voyage is a religious experience, that you feel like you're closer to God on it. That's a pretty tall statement to make. And I go there, And I pretty much experienced that for the most part. I'm not saying it was a religious experience, but it's definitely a place that I look forward to going to. It's a place that I look forward to going back to now. I just didn't get that with Knoebels. That I was almost expecting another holiday world at Knoebels, and I don't know what I got there. It wasn't anything like
see, well, and see, that'll go back to my original point of you have to know what flying turns is, and I think the disadvantage for you specifically was not having experienced Knoebels in, I guess, at a more novice point in your coaster enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm? Sure, enthusiasm. We'll go with that.
All right.
Hashtag new words.
Sure. we're inventing new words here, COASTER-net Uncut. So that's why it's uncut, baby.
It's uncut.
I had to give you an opportunity to do that. So getting back here, so jeez, I can't even remember where I was going with that. You have to know what it is, and you have to know what flying turns is. And I think most people who, for lack of a better term, fall in love with Knoebels do so at a young age. My first trip that I remember to Knoebels was when I was, it would have been the first 2007. So I was that was the summer between either 8th and 9th grade or 9th and 10th grade. So I mean, I was that was one of the first parks that I went to. My coaster enthusiasm started in 2007. That's when I went to Cedar Point for the first time. That's when I went to King's Dominion for the first time. I went to Knoebels. I went to Geauga Lake on that trip as well out to Cedar Point. Which, lucky for me, I got to Geauga Lake there. That was looking back on that.
Lucky for you. Lucky for you.
7 years later, how lucky was I to get to experience that park? Maybe not in one of its finer forms, but like the Big Dipper at Geauga Lake was a fantastic roller coaster, I thought. I really wish that, that'll find a new home. But Knoebels is one of the parks that I live very close to it, less than 2 hours from it. It's one of those parks that I just always went to, and I always knew what it was. I always knew what to expect. And maybe this plays into it too. My aunt and I talk a lot about East Coast versus West Coast versus Midwest. And we notice once you get past like Cedar Point area and you start heading west, there's a much different attitude. And that's not just with the amusement parks. The Midwest attitude is very, very friendly. The East Coast attitude, I see it at school here. Western New York, you kind of have some people from the Midwest, so there's kind of a gray area. But when you're talking about like Allentown, Philadelphia, New York City, New England is kind of a region all by itself, but on the East Coast, I'm talking New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania at least, Maryland, parts of Virginia, and then when you go down south, the hospitality is different. But the Mid-Atlantic, the East Coast of the Mid-Atlantic, there's really a different attitude here, and it comes out very much when I'm at Six Flags Great Adventure, and I just do not care for the guest services and the the acting of the employees there. I just do not like it at all. Great Adventure, I struggle to go there more than once a year. You have all these fantastic roller coasters and these fantastic rides, and I go to that park once a year, maybe twice, if I'm really, really struggling to, I just need to ride some rides. And, I've recently been to a Dorney and a Knoebels and a Hershey. I'll go to all three of those really before I go to Great Adventure, not because of the rides, but the customer service is awful. And when we went to Six Flags Great America last season and Six Flags St. Louis, it was just so different. And it was such a refreshing change of pace for us when we saw that there are parks in the Six Flags chain where the employees know how to treat their guests properly. So maybe it's the fact that I've grown up with the East Coast. Go ahead.
Well, not according to some clubs out there, that Six Flags Great America doesn't know how to treat their guests. And, apparently when you don't follow the rules of the park, that's when they don't like treating you special all of a sudden. So, yeah, I could see that.
I spend a night, a few hours there the first night, and then we spent another day and a half there. We had a hell of a time at Great America. We loved Great America. Six Flags St. Louis does not have a great coaster lineup, especially for Six Flags, by any means. The Six Flags St. Louis coaster lineup is really American Thunder, and then after that, what are your top rides? Mr. Freeze, Batman, and the Boss, really. I mean, after that, you've got a spinning coaster, you've got a boomerang, you've got pretty much nothing but clones at that park, really. I mean, you've got a Vekoma Looper that is awful in Ninja, and you've got a mine train. You've got nothing to write home about after American Thunder. I mean, Mr. Freeze is good. I really like the Boss, but the Boss is one that more people hate than like. So, and we had a great time at Six Flags St. Louis. We thought that was a great park, and it had to do with the attitude of the employees. And maybe because I've grown up with that East Coast attitude, I'm not trying to call out Philadelphia, New York, and, Trenton, but those are like the three big cities, and Harrisburg to a point when you go out to Hershey. But the East Coast attitude of just the people is different. It's more of like a defensive, not as friendly, not as a friend. You know what I'm talking about. And if you well-traveled people will know what I'm talking about, that there's just an East Coast attitude and a not quite as friendly attitude on the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic. When you get up into New England, I've always had good experiences in New England, and Carowinds was very hospitable. King's Dominion even to a point. Now, Busch Gardens is different, but the Florida parks, obviously, Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, you get that hospitable nature there. Six Flags Over Georgia, we even had a lot of employees say, "Hi, how's your day going?" Just walking by them. It's that deep South, that Southern hospitality. You don't get that up in my area here. And maybe because you're in the Midwest and you're more accustomed to a slightly friendlier attitude, maybe it's just because I'm used to it and you're not, that you just didn't have as good of a time. That's the only thing I can really think of as to why Knoebels just completely rubbed you the wrong way.
Well, I can tell you, having been on this trip, that this summer we did a trip. We basically did from Cedar Point all the way through the southern Pennsylvania parks, up to Great Adventure, up to Six Flags New England, and then back down to Knoebels and everything. And I can tell you that's the exact experience I had at most of the Pennsylvania parks, and definitely Knoebels. I thought the friendliest of the parks was Six Flags New England. I thought they had pretty good customer service up there. I have heard some horror stories on different online sites about them. But for the most part, I thought Six Flags New England was the most friendly out of all the parks I went to. But yeah, you're definitely right that there's a certain attitude, and
it's different.
It's different. And it's I don't know. I can't put my finger on it because it's not always a negative attitude, but like you said, I'm accustomed to anywhere I go. The first thing people ask you is, "Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for coming." That's a standard greeting at whatever store you go to, any restaurant you go to, just people at reception desks, just people you meet in everyday life. That I've grown up in Chicago my whole life. I lived in the city for most of my life. I moved out to the suburbs now. Since I've graduated from college, I've been in Chicago my entire life. And that's the attitude I've come expected, that I kind of expect when I go to places. And when I went to Knoebels, for the life of me, I cannot think of a single solitary person at the entire park that ever greeted me, that said, "Hi, how are you doing today?" It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at those parks. I never remember a time at Great Adventure where
I never remember anyone coming up to me and saying, "Hi, how's your day going?" Six Flags Over Georgia, Six Flags St. Louis, Six Flags Great America, Holiday World, Worlds of Fun. You see that kind of thing, and that's not something that's trained for. I was never trained that way at Dorney Park. That's just something they do. Now, me, myself, being traveled, I know, hey, the people like it when you ask how their day's going. So when I have my thumbs up on the dispatch button, I'll turn to the guest in row 8 for town and say, "Hey, how's your guys' day going? What rides have you been on?" They appreciate stuff like that, and especially at Dorney Park, where that's not something you're used to. It's kind of like, hey, this guy's making an effort to make conversation with me and, make our day a little better. That's something that stands out, whereas in the Midwest and on the West Coast, too, I haven't been to California, same thing. That's just something you come to expect that everyone does. And on the East Coast, it's not the same.
Well, the other problem I had is that a lot of parks couldn't answer questions for me either, and I don't know what that's an issue of, but for sure, I loved Hershey Park. I thought it was the nicest of all the parks we went to on this last summer trip. But trying to find out where stuff was, like I'm trying to find a restaurant on their map, and I talked to no less than 5 people, and none of the 5 could tell me where it's at. And what was funny is they all told me a different area, and I kind of had the same experience at Knoebels too. I was asking questions of people, and they just couldn't answer it. So I don't know if that's not part of the training, or if Midwesterners are just naturally smarter than people from the East Coast. Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe that's it.
Oh boy. Like what kind of questions? Like Hershey Park? You said you're looking for a restaurant. Now, to be fair, and I'm not excusing the employees at all, because one of the first things we do at the Dorney Park training is we're taken on a walkthrough tour of the park, and we're shown where everything is, and it's part of the quiz that you have to know where certain stuff is. So I'm not saying people retain that for 3 months during the summer, however long they're working, but it is part of the training. So what kind of questions are you asking that they don't know? Just like locations of stuff? Or?
Well, at Hershey Park, I was asking for the location of, I think it's the only sit-down restaurant around the park. It's actually, part of the problem is the restaurant actually isn't in the park. It's right outside the ticket booth. But I just think that it's the only sit-down restaurant that they have there. I would naturally assume that people should just kind of know where that's at, because it was a really nice restaurant, pretty well done. I just found it hard to believe.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, it's the only waiter service,
exactly.
Table service. There is a sit down one right next to Great Bear in the Kissing Tower that's sit down, but it's counter service, and it's like most of your corporate parks, you have a place where you go up, and they have nachos and burritos, quesadillas, pasta. It's not your standard theme park art. You can get chicken fingers and stuff, but it's not the standard theme park offering of food. It's sort of like a cafeteria, for lack of a better term, but it's Hershey, so the food's pretty decent. And then you take it and sit down at a table or a booth and eat it. Where, Six Flags, you get your burger and fries or whatever. It's the same thing.
And then at Knoebels, I had issues because I'm unaccustomed to the free park, and I say free park because nothing's actually free in the park. So you can just walk around for free, I guess. But so I had all these tickets. I was trying to find out from at their main gift shop, which I would think would be a place that should be pretty well versed on the Knoebels policies, considering that's their gift shop. I was asking what I could do with my extra tickets, if I could use them for food, or if I could exchange them, or if I just had to use them for rides, and no one there could give me those answers as well. And I'm just like, whatever. So we just rode Phoenix a few more times, which worked out for me because Phoenix is really the only thing I like at that park. So there you go.
Well, and that's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. And here's, I think I might have mentioned this before when you told me this story a while back. Maybe the reason that they didn't know is because, maybe their thought process is, this guy's asking if he can use ride tickets for food. Do we do that? I've never heard that we've done that. Maybe we do now. Maybe it's new. I don't know. That's their attitude. It's like, It's like someone is like, "Did you ride Flying Turns yet?" It's like, Flying Turns is open? They opened that thing? When did they open that up out there?
That can get open. Hey, maybe I'll go ride it.
It's like, hey, Bob, did you guys open Flying Turns? Oh, yeah, we finished it last week. We let them on last weekend, didn't you hear? So and again, going back to you either get it or you don't, that's the Knoebels attitude. As much as it's East Coast, then you have the East Coast attitude, a West Coast attitude, a Midwest attitude. Knoebels kind of has its own attitude altogether, where they're just like, all right, park's opening at 10 today. There's not many people here. Let's open at 10:30. 11:15. Like,
that sounds like another Pennsylvania park that I've become familiar with recently. And we don't want to get into that park because we'll be here for another hour and a half if I got into that park.
Yeah. So, but again, Knoebels is almost so laid back to a fault. It's not so much if you've been there. For someone like me who knows how the people there function, and it's just kind of like, hey, these people are just relaxed here. They're like, can I get $20 in tickets? Yep, $20. Thank you. Here you go.
No, that was exactly it. That was exactly the attitude, and I'm just like, okay, whatever.
That's what they do. They're not, oh, how's your day? How's your day going? It's like, can I get a $20 ticket book? Sure. Put the 20 down. Here you go. That's it. That's all it is. And it's like when they're building Flying Turns, it's like, hey, you got some more nails over there? I need them over here. This piece is falling off. Okay, here we go. There you go. That's how they run. It's like, oh, it's right. Oh, it's like he's talking to the inspector. Oh, we're good? We can open it? Hey, get those trains over here. Hey, we get those trains on the track. We're going to open it now. It's like, and again, that whole attitude and the fact that they're just like, we can't get it to work. Oh, well, we'll try it again next year. It's like the Chicago Cubs baseball team. It's like, well, there's always next year.
There's always next year for them.
Next year never comes for those Cubs fans.
and they are a sorry lot, those Cubs fans. Trust me, a very sorry lot. So now I'm offending Midwesterners too, so I like that. Just offending everyone tonight.
No, and again, I don't want to offend the Midwesterners by talking about the Cubs fan because I'm a Red Sox fan myself, so I feel your pain. I mean, this year we're not doing so hot, but couple of World Series last couple of years, it's a little bit different attitude now. But I wasn't around 86 years ago, but I did have to deal with that for a while, especially being from the East Coast. Got a lot of friends that are Yankee fans, so you put up with that. But we're good for each other. And East Coast, West Coast. I love all the Midwest parks that I've been to pretty much. Dollywood, the same thing. That's kind of a cross between Midwest and Deep South. But you get the hospitality there. It's just different on the East Coast, and it's different yet at Knoebels. And I would hope that here's maybe this will be what I end the discussion with from my end. The next time you come out to the East Coast, I would hope that I would be able to actually meet up with you this time around. And secondly, I would hope that you would give Knoebels another chance. And now that you know what it is, and considering that you haven't ridden Flying Turns and you won't have ridden the new steel coaster that might open within the next 5 years. I would hope that now that you know what it is and you know what to expect, and keeping in mind the discussion we've had tonight, I would hope that you would give it another chance. And I could only hope that you would have a better experience, because I never like hearing stories of people going to a park that I enjoy and not having a good time, especially when it's a park so close to me, especially Dorney Park, too, having worked there. And I don't hear many bad stories about that. But a Knoebels or a Hershey Park, when I hear that people go there and don't have a good time, I genuinely feel bad, because I almost feel like a sense of ownership because I frequent them so often, and I always have a good time at those parks, especially Knoebels. So I would hope you'd give it another chance, and I would really could only wish that you would have a better time.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Nobody really knows. And before we break out into a Beach Boys song about types of girls and where they're from here, I think we should probably end this discussion. What? I think we should probably end this discussion here. As a little preview, though, next week, we might actually have a special guest host with us for the first time ever. And we're going to have a different type of discussion. But I hear that there is a firestorm of iciness happening down at Epcot Center right now over this Maelstrom and Frozen debate. And we're going to bring in our Disney expert next week to have a little discussion about Maelstrom and Frozen and everything else Disney. So if you're one of the Mouseketeers out there, maybe you should come back next week and join us for that show. So I think we've had a good time here tonight talking a little bit about flying turns and Knoebels and a little bit East Coast versus Midwest feel. So I think it's good time to end this now. So
real quick before we wrap up, I don't want to leave the people off. I don't want to leave the people hanging here because we did have them answer a question here.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Because now that we've kind of wrapped up our discussion of the golden tickets, we talked about the Cedar Point Europa discussion and then talked about flying turns tonight. We did ask a question. We had a few people respond of what they think about the golden tickets and what they agree and disagree with. So I think we had a couple people here. I'll just read a few of them. Quick, we had my Aunt Sue wrote in, and she said that she most agreed with the food category. Dollywood, she loved the food at Dollywood. We all love the food at Dollywood. Knoebels obviously is on that list. Maybe deservedly so, if you think maybe not. I think Dollywood's food is better than Knoebels. I will say that right up front. No problem with Dollywood winning that award. And she also agrees with Boulder Dash. I know you don't. Boulder Dash isn't my number one wooden coaster. It's my number 3. I have Voyage and Phoenix ahead of it. But Boulder Dash, not a bad choice. Again, Voyage is a love it or hate it ride. And she most disagrees, she says definitely, with flying turns. So there you go. Dwayne wrote in, our good friend Dwayne. He wrote in, and he disagrees with flying turns as well. He thinks the fact that it took years to build and open, it should have an asterisk by it. So that's an interesting thing. It says similar to Barry Bonds and his home run record. He thinks Banshee or Goliath should have won. He thinks that several of them were correct, the food at Dollywood, and he liked that they won the Christmas event as well. He says he's looking forward to Millennium Force possibly being dethroned as top steel coaster. He's not saying that Fury 325 will beat it out, but he thinks it's time for the run to end, and if there were ever a coaster to do it, Fury 325 may be it. And I kind of asked him, do you think it will take a few years? Because we talked about how things slowly change over the years, and he thinks that it's going to have to happen right away. Otherwise, Millennium Force is just kind of just always stay a step higher. Leviathan is kind of in that discussion now at number 6, but it's not quite there yet.
I don't see it happening, to be honest with you. Millennium Force is such a great ride, and a lot of people are anointing Fury already. I'm just not ready to anoint it yet before I ride it. But right. Even the layout, doesn't I've never ridden Leviathan, so it's hard for me to say. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen. There is a strong anti-Intamin sentiment out there. So, Millennium Force has that working against it too, that we've already discussed how those things work here. So I wouldn't be surprised if a B&M eventually overtakes it. I would probably think Raptor would be the one to do it though, not Fury 325.
Oh boy. No, it'll be interesting considering that the top 3 coasters on the steel list right now are Intamin rides, and then you have a bunch of Beamers after that. Mm-hmm. Texas Giants in there too. The last person to write in here was Steel Rock. He always has some good stuff in there on the forums. He's been on a lot of 380, it says in his signature here, so he's right up there in my neck of the woods. He says he didn't go to any of the top 5 parks or ride any of the top 5 new rides, so he can't really disagree or agree with some of them for this year. He thinks, he says Millennium Force is a great ride, but he would put a couple of B&M Hypercoasters ahead of it that are in the top 20 right now. I believe Goliath is his top coaster from just remembering his ballot from the poll. I think he has Behemoth up there as well. Intimidator, I think he has up there. Diamondback, College Cherry. He has all of those very, very high. Leviathan as well. He thinks that the top 2 wooden coasters, which are Boulder Dash and El Toro, he doesn't think that those are quite as good as some others that are even in the top 15. He thinks that there's like 6 or 7 that he would put above each of those. I do notice that in his poll that he submitted, he does have El Toro and even Voyage a little lower. I think he has El Toro, I don't think is in his top 10, and I think Voyage is at the lower end of his top 10. I know he has Lightning Racer, I think, in the top 5. So he has said that he doesn't like the intense airtime that some of those rides offer. So if the intense ejector airtime is not your forte, Voyage and El Toro are not the wooden coasters for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, good to hear from a few people. I think we're gonna keep doing that. Almost forgot about it here. We got into such a heated discussion, but I didn't want to end the golden ticket discussion without having a few of the people have their comments read, since they did contribute that. So we're gonna keep asking those questions, I think, on a weekly basis. So even when we don't do the live shows where we'll have the people down in the chat rooms here to read their comments directly, we will have an avenue for them to write in the week leading up to the show and let their comments be heard and keep people involved. It's always nice when we get people involved. So we'll keep this going. Hopefully we can get more and more people writing in, and maybe eventually we'll get to a show where we can just have people ask us questions.
Well, absolutely. You know, if there's one thing I can suggest is for people to come to COASTER.net. We've got great news, great content. The forums have really knowledgeable people there. And, of course, you can use the forums to interact with us here on the show as well. It's COASTER-net.com. And we're always accepting new members. You know, we have a few rules here and there to keep it civil, like most forums do, but for sure, come on out, get involved, and especially send us your questions and your comments. And I'd love to do an all question show, to be honest with you. And I would be really interested to see what types of questions they ask us, and then see, because me and you are similar sometimes, but as we've seen over the past 2 episodes, you know, we have our great disagreements too as well. So
we do. We have a lot of things, we have a lot of things that we agree on. Goliath and Diamondback just being a few, and Voyage. I think we're both really on board with Voyage. I think we both agree that paying to park at parks is quite honestly a crock. And it's a load of crap. And then you got things like the flying turns thing. We disagree on that. We disagree on New Texas Giant. We discussed that a couple weeks ago, and we slightly disagree on the best park thing too. And there's a lot more where all that came from. So we'd like to have some shows where we get some questions and see if we can mix all that together, and we could theoretically cover a lot of topics in a question show. So we'll build up our audience here in the coming weeks as we get off to the off season. We've got some good topics that we want to discuss, and we kind of have those listed down. But maybe down the road we'll open this up and kind of make it a free for all for a week or so.
Uh-oh.
Could be scary. It could be scary.
On that, I'm Andy Robarchuk from Chicago.
And I'm Danny Miller from Rochester.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors. We'll see you at COASTER.net. Till next week. Good night.
See you next week.